Good, Gimel. Go ahead.
Hey.
A needle whose eye or point, he's going to call, so I might have to interrupt. But a
Go for
needle
it.
whose eye was or point was removed is tahor. If one prepared it for stretching, it is tameh. A needle of sack makers whose eye was removed is tameh, since one writes with it. If its point was removed, it is tahor. If it is used for stretching, then either way is tameh. A needle that has become rusty, if the rust obstructs the stitching, it is tahor. But if not, it is tameh. A small fork that once straightened is tahor, and if one bent it, it reverts to its former state of tumah. Wood that serves metal is tameh, and metal that serves wood is tahor. How so? A gate key of wood whose bit is of metal, even if one is tameh. A gate key of metal whose bit is of wood is tahor. A ring of metal whose signet is of almug is tameh, and a ring of almug whose signet is of metal is tahor. The tooth of a plate or a gate key or a standing key is tameh on its own. Regarding Ascalonian grapnels that broke, but their hook maintains intact, they are tameh. A pitchfork, a winnowing fork, a rake, and similarly head comb that one have their prongs removed, and as one replaced them with a prong of metal, they are tameh. And concerning all of these, Rabbi Yeshua said the scribes have introduced a novel principle, and I cannot answer it. Okay.
Hey. So, and again, following in the same sort of principle is Mishna Ches, the Masrek Shel Pishtan. So, a flax comb, Shenetlu Shinav. So some of its teeth, some of its teeth were removed, and there were two teeth left behind. It's still tameh because it can still perform its original function, even if not as well. Achas tahor, one tooth is no longer useful. Okay. However, all of the teeth by themselves are individually tameh. So the ones that broke off are tameh. Now, this is an interesting thing over here, because they can't be used to comb flax. But the commentary says over here that they have an immediate use that they can be that they can be put to without any further adaptation, which is using them as a stylus to write on a wax tablet. Okay, we've seen that before with other implements. So it's legally deemed a utensil, but the commentary makes the point that the tooth does need to be designated for this purpose in order to be susceptible, but it doesn't need to be physically adapted. So that's why we say that it is. We still call it tameh because it is because it doesn't require any physical adaptation, but it nonetheless does need somebody to say, "Oh yeah, let me use this as a stylus," and then immediately, as soon as he's thought of it, it's now susceptible to tumah again. Okay. The shel tzemer. Now, wool combs are different from flax combs. Because wool combs, as the commentary explains, have got 2 rows of teeth, and they're smaller. They're not as the flax comb apparently is bigger and only needs 1 row, and the wool comb is different. Okay, the wool comb is shenitlu shinav achas mibin time. If every other tooth is taken out, it's tahor. It's no use, and it's lost its function. It's not able to do the job properly. However, if it's got 3 left in one place, then it's tameh. Now, the commentators, the Gemara, in fact, jumps on this, which appears to be a contradiction, because it's saying that the first part is saying that if you're taking out every second one, it's tahor, but if you've got 3 together, then it's tameh. What about 2?
Right. Okay.
The implication, if you took out every other one, sounds like 2 together should be tameh. So the Gemara comes with an explanation that there's a difference in this regard between the 2 rows of teeth. The outer row, i.e. the row further from the handle, is the one that accomplishes most of the work of the combing, and therefore it requires a minimum of 3 teeth to perform its job properly. But the inner row, the one closer to the handle, is primarily intended to grip the wool, which is hung from a hook of some sort, and to hold it taut so that it will not hang limply downwards. And for this purpose, 2 teeth suffice. Okay, so that's the explanation of why it seems to be contradictory. Okay. However, the outer tooth, if the outer tooth is one of these 3, that doesn't count. Why? Because the outer tooth is like the outer tooth of a comb, like a head comb. It's got that thick piece on the outside.
Right.
That isn't functional. It isn't part of the comb. It's just to protect the inner teeth from things on the outside.
That's right.
Okay. Nitlu mimenu shtayim v'asan lemalketes. So if two teeth were removed from the comb and he turned them into tweezers, they've become tamei, okay, because they've now been physically adapted. Now this is different from the flax comb again, because the flax comb didn't need an adaptation, but the wool comb did actually need an adaptation it needed a physical change in order to make it into a new kli. Okay. Achas his kina lener or lemituach tamea. Also, if he prepared it for use with a lamp, in other words, to use as a little scraping tool to pull out the remnants of what's inside the candle, that's a designation. Or for stretching, if he put it into a piece of wood so that it could be used for stretching fabric, that's also now a kli. Okay. Next parak. All right, so now we're dealing with metal keilim, and now we'll be dealing with what makes them tamei, and now we're going to deal with what makes them tahor. What level of damage does a kli mateches have to suffer in order to lose its tuma? Kli matechos kama hu shiran. What's the shir? Hadili, a bucket kedei lemalos bach. Right, if you've got a bucket is used for filling things up with, and if it develops a hole such that you can't use it for filling things, it's no longer useful. Okay, or even if the handle breaks off, because you need a handle to pull that bucket up. Right. So that actually, even though it's still got a receptacle and it looks like a nice kli, but if it's used for drawing water out of the well and it's no longer got a handle, then it becomes tahor.
That bucket, though, it can't take water, but it can hold other things.
Ah, yes, right. So it seems like what we go after is the common usage, because we're going to have some other examples in our Mishnah right now, where we see that even though it doesn't use it's no longer fit for its primary usage, it's still fit for another common usage. So they don't mention that with the bucket, but they do mention it with let's just go ahead. Kum the kettle kedei leyachem bo. If it's got to be enough left to heat water in it, and if you can't heat water in the kettle, it's tahor. Mecham is an urn, somewhat bigger than a kettle. Kedei lekabel slaim. See, now that's your case over there. Right. With this urn, apparently, I mean, I'm not an expert in their culture, but they've left us a little time capsule to tell us that urns were commonly used for storing seller coins. Okay. I wouldn't have guessed that, but since that's what they used to do, that's right. even if the urn develops a hole, it's still used as a piggy bank. Okay, halefis, a stew pot, kedei lekabel kitonos, kiton being a ladle. So since the urn, the pot was not just used for cooking in, but also you put it in the cupboard and store ladles in it. So if it developed a hole but you could still keep ladles in it, then it's still tamei. Although I have to actually, now that I'm thinking about this, I have to ask a question, because normally we say that if a kli is only used for tashmish of a kli, not for tashmish adam, I suppose maybe it's just it helps the person. It's a thing that helps the person for the ladle. But we said if something is a tashmish kli, then it's not tamei. Okay. There's some subtlety in there about what's the, when is it something that's specifically for the kli, or when is it something that's convenient for the person? Like you're looking for somewhere to put down your ladle. There's a nice pot to put it down in, as opposed to like the covers of Keilim, where you're not looking for somewhere to put your kli. You're looking for something to protect the kli. And that cover is tahor. Okay. Okay. Kitonos. What about ladles themselves? Kedei lekabel prutos. So ladles themselves were used as a storage place for prutas. Midos yayin b'yayin umidos shemen b'shemen. Okay. So wine measures need to be able to hold wine, and oil measures need to be able to hold oil. And oil is obviously much more viscous, so it needs a bigger hole to make it unsuitable. Rabbi Eliezer Omer kulan beprutos. He says those measuring things are also commonly used for prutas. They might not even be disagreeing. They might just be saying what's our minhag in our places, that we actually use these measuring things for storing prutas in them. Okay. There are no major chidushim coming out over here. It's all the same principle. We're just seeing practical applications of the same principle, that as long as it can still perform one of its commonly used functions, it's still tameh. Rabbi Akiva Omer, "Hamechusar chatifa tameh." He says any utensil that's lacking a chatifa. Now there's a little bit of dispute as to what chatifa means. The Art Scroll's first translation over here is kava, but they do make that follows Rav and the first interpretation of Rush, which is from that's not the common word that you'd use for a kava, but it comes from it's cognates to the Hebrew chamas, something that can be stolen from the pot, namely its kava. But there are other interpretations. It says alternatively chatifa means polishing, and according to this interpretation, Rabbi Akiva rules that a newly manufactured metal utensil is susceptible to tumah even before it's been shone and polished.
Okay.
Okay, so that somehow seems to be a little bit more of a logical thing to talk about, because why would you think that a pot lacking a cover would be tahor? Anyway, mechusar latisha tahor, but if it hasn't been hammered, in other words, it's still an unfinished. It's still got a receptacle, and if you're in a pinch, you could use it, but that's not the way people usually use it. They wait until it's been finished, at least until it's been hammered into the right shape, even if it hasn't been finished being polished. Okay. Makel, a star. She'asa v'rosha masmer kamin chaziana. Okay. So the stick, starting off with the stick is tahor. Okay, because any wooden implement needs to have a receptacle. But now somebody has attached a big ball on the top. Basically, and what they've turned it into is it's not just like a grip for the staff, because if it's just a grip, then it's part of the staff and it's secondary to the staff and it follows the staff. But this has turned it into a weapon, something that you can use to smack somebody over the head with. Okay, and now the functional bit is the big knob on the top, and that is metal. And since that's metal, it's tameh.
See, I was thinking of it says here it's shaped like an apple. I was thinking like a decoration. You, of course, being a warrior, thought of smacking somebody. Right.
Well, me, of course, because I've read the commentary.
Oh, right.
Okay, the point being that that's the functional piece. Right. So now, if instead of let's take away that apple-shaped thing on the top, and instead he's studded it with nails. Again, we're talking about something that's going to be a weapon, and that's like a mace. Has got all those things on it to cause damage to the enemy. Okay, Simro, if he put nails around it, also it's tameh, because the nails, the functional piece that's turning it into a weapon, is it's metal and doesn't need a receptacle, and it's tameh. Rabbi Shimon disputes. He says achi yasebo shlosha sedarim. You need to make 3 rows of nails before it's a useful weapon. So less than that, it's just basically a decoration, in which case the staff is still the important part. But if he specifically did it for decoration, then it's all tahor. It doesn't matter if it was the metal ball or if it was a row of studs. Right. If it was done with the intent of just making it look pretty, it's tahor. Okay. Asa barosho meinekes. Okay, it's an interesting little discussion over here. This meinekes is a siphon or a tube of some sort, and v'chein badeles tahora. And similarly, if he attached it to the door, the staff remains tahor. Now, hang on. I beg your pardon. The metal tube. Just a second. Okay, in this case, it's simply a tube, okay? Because this particular tube, we have to make it. The article points out that we translate it simply as a tube, since, as we'll see from the continuation of the Mishnah, this particular tube does not have the legal status of a utensil and cannot be properly termed a siphon just yet. Okay, so in this case, one fitted this wooden staff into a tight-fitting metal tube, and it serves as a decorative metal band. So before it was attached to the staff, the tube was not susceptible to tumah, since it is not classified as a utensil. And now that it's been attached, it also is not, because it's still secondary to the staff, and it's a decoration for the staff, or it's maybe to protect or if it's attached to the door, it's to protect the door from wear, or as a decorative element. Okay, and it's the same halacha. This is tahor. However, haisa kli v'chibra lo, if the tube was actually a kli already and it had been used as a siphon, and so it's already got tumah in its own right, and now he attaches it to the wooden staff,
right?
It remains tameh. But this is talking about just wedging it on, not actually making it a firm attachment, because it carries on to say, when does it become tahor? Beis Shammai omrim mishi yechabel. Beis Shammai say, in order for this to lose any tumah that it has, or to be non-susceptible to tumah, it must be destroyed, so it's no longer a functional kli. And Beis Hillel omrim mishi yechaber. No, as soon as he attaches it, if he firmly attaches it as a permanent attachment, either to the staff or to the door. Now, if it's to the door, it's a little more obvious, because it's now a permanent attachment of something that's attached to the ground. Okay, end of story over there. But even with the staff, once it's permanently attached to the staff, it's nonetheless it's not a functional piece that's adding any value. It's an adornment to the staff, and therefore, as a decoration of the wooden implement, it is now secondary to the wooden implement, and it is tahor. Okay. Fine, let's go back to
Yud Aleph. Regarding metal utensils, their flatwares and their hollowwares are tameh. If they break, they become tahor, and if one refashions them into utensils, they revert to their former state of tumah. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says this does not apply to every kind of tumah, but only to corpse tumah. Every metal utensil that has a name on its own is tameh, except for a door, bolt, a lock, a socket that is under the pivot. And the pivot, the beam, and pipe, since they are made to be attached to the ground. Regarding one who makes utensils from iron ore, or from metal ingot, or from the hoop of a wheel, or from sheet metal, or from plating, from the bases of utensils, or from the rims of utensils, from the handles of utensils, from scraps, or from filings, the utensils are tahor. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nori says even utensils made from cut pieces. But utensils made from pieces of broken utensils, or from fragments, or from nails that were known to have been made from other utensils are tameh. If one made utensils from nails, Beis Shammai rules them tameh, and Beis Hillel says they're tahor. Regarding a piece of tameh iron,
that was three. Yeah.
Let's see.
Okay.
You learning Mishnah, guy?
Yeah, you're being very well behaved so far.
So far, two of them sitting here. They don't leave me alone. In what case are these words said? With obligatory pairs of bird offerings and voluntary bird offerings which mingle together, but with obligatory pairs of bird offerings which mingle with each other, one pair for this woman, one pair for that woman, two pairs for this woman, two pairs for that woman, or three pairs for this woman, three pairs for that woman. Half of the mingled birds are valid to be offered, and half of the birds are invalid to be offered. If, however, there was one pair of obligatory bird offerings for this woman and two such pairs for that woman, or three such pairs for this or that woman, or 10 such pairs for that woman, or 100 such pairs for that woman, the amount of birds in the smallest group is valid. Valid to be offered, whether they are brought for the same obligation or whether they are brought for two different obligations, whether they are brought from one woman to, or whether they are brought from two different women. What is the case of the two groups of offerings being brought for one type of obligation? For the first group of offerings, one was brought one for one incident of a woman giving birth. The other groups are also for incidents of giving birth, or for the first group of offerings was brought for one occurrence of ziva. Then the other group of groups that also brought for occurrence of ziva. These are the cases of both groups being brought for one type of obligation. And what is the case of the two groups of offerings being brought for two different types of obligations? If one group was brought for a birth control, the other for a birth, and the other was brought for an occurrence of ziva. What is the case of two groups of offerings being brought from two women? If the two groups of birds were brought to atone for this woman upon giving birth, and to atone for the woman giving birth, or for the two groups of birds were brought to atone for this woman for an occurrence of ziva, and to atone for that woman for an occurrence of ziva, these are the cases of the groups belonging to both women being brought for one type of obligation. And what is the case of the groups of obligation offerings to two women being brought for two different types of obligations? If one group of offerings were brought to atone for this woman upon giving birth, and the other of offerings were brought to atone for the woman that upon occurrence of a ziva, and Yossi says two women who were obligated to bring birth offerings and took two pairs of birds for their offerings mixed together without designating which particular birds would belong to which woman, or if they together give the purchase money for their pairs of birds to the Kohen who sells these birds without designating which money belongs to whom, the Kohen may offer whichever birds he wishes as a katos, and may offer whichever birds he wishes as an olah, whether they are both brought for the same type of obligation, or whether they are brought for two different types of obligations. Okay. Gimel. No, I'm sorry. Base olive. Undesignated pair from which one bird flew away is to the open air of the world, or flew among bird offerings which must be left to die. Or if one of them died, we must take a partner for the second bird. If it flew to among others which are fit for offering, it is unfit, and it renders unfit one bird, corresponding to itself. For a bird which flies out of its pair and into other pairs is unfit, and it renders unfit one bird corresponding to itself.
Okay. Bechoros.
Okay. Vav. If its nose is punctured, notched, or slit, or its lips is punctured, notched, or slit, or its front teeth are notched or worn down, or its back teeth are on the loop, Reb Kanina ben Antikino says we do not examine behind the molars nor the molars themselves. The sheath of the male organ is notched, and the genitals of the female is in constipated animals. The tail is notched in the bone, but not in the point, not in the joint, or if the tip of the tail was exposed to the bone, or if there was a finger breadth of flesh between the joints of the tail. It does not have testicles, or it only has one testicle. If one, Israel says if it has two pouches, it has two testicles. If it only has one, it only has one testicle. Rabbi Akiva says it should be set on a buttock and squeezed. If there is a testicle there, it will eventually emerge. It once happened, they squeezed it, and it did not emerge, and it was slaughtered, and it was found attached to the loins. And Rabbi Akiva permitted it, but Rabbi Yochanan ben Nori prohibited it. Okay.
Okay. Sanhedrin. Gimel A.
Sanhedrin. A friend and an enemy. A friend is one's, I'm sorry. A friend, hey, Rava, hey, sorry.
Hey, you're right.
Hey, I skipped the page. A friend and an enemy. A friend is one's groomsman. An enemy is one who did not speak to him for 3 days out of enmity. They said to him, the Jewish people are not suspecting of this. How do they examine the witnesses? They bring them in and admonish them. Then they send everyone out and retain the most prominent of them. And they say to him, state how you know this one owes money, that one. And he said, he told me I owe him. And so told me that he owes him. He has said nothing until he says he admitted to him before us that he owes him 200 zuz. Afterwards, they bring in the second one and examine him. If their words are found to coincide, they take up the matter. And if two votes not liable and one votes liable, they are not liable. If two vote liable and one votes not liable, he is liable. If one votes not liable and one votes liable, or even if two exonerate to obligate, and one says, I do not know, they add more judges. When they conclude the matter, they bring them in. The head judge says, so-and-so, you are not liable, or so-and-so, you are liable. And from where do we know when one of the judges leaves the court, he should not say, I exonerated and my colleagues obligated, but what could I do since my colleagues outnumbered me? Concerning this, it is stated, you shall not go about among your people bearing tales, and it is stated, one who bears tales reveals secrets.
Okay.
That's it.
Sukkah.
Okay. Okay. If one suspends the nails from above downwards, if they are 3 handbreadths above the ground, it is invalid. Or below upwards, if it reaches a height of 10 tefachim, and from the ground, it is valid. But Yossi says, just as from below upwards 10 tefachim suffice, also from downward 10 tefachim will suffice. If one moves the skak 3 tefachim away from the walls, it's invalid. A house that was beach and he placed skak over it, if there are 12 cubits from the wall to the skak, it is invalid. The same applies to a courtyard that is surrounded by a portico. A large sukkah that is ringwood material they may not use for a skak, and if there were 4 cubits beneath it, it is invalid. If one makes a sukkah like a conical hut, or you leaned against the wall, Reb Eliezer invalidates it since it has no roof, but it will come and declare it valid. A large reed mat, if made to lie upon, it is susceptible to combinations, and we not use it for skak. If for shade, we may use it for skak, and it is not susceptible to contamination. Reb Eliezer says whether the mat is small or large, if we made it to lie upon, it is susceptible to contamination, and we may not use it as skak. And if it is for skak, we may use it for skak, and it is not susceptible to contamination.
Okay, brachas. Beis Aleph.
Someone was reading the Torah and the time of the recital arrived. If he set his heart to it, he has discharged his obligation. If not, he has not discharged his obligation. Between the paragraphs, he asks out of respect and answers, and in the middle, he asks out of fear and answers. These are the words of Reb Meir, Reb Yehuda, who says, in the middle, he may greet on account of fear, and he may return a greeting out of respect. If he breaks, he may greet out of respect and return the greeting of anyone. These are the breaks. Oh, let me just take a second, okay, Saul? These are the breaks. These are the breaks between the first and second bracha, between the second and Shema, between Shema and She'el, and it shall come to pass, and between it shall come to pass, and the Lord spoke, between the Lord spoke, and true and firm. Rabbi Yehuda says one is not permitted to interrupt between the Va'omer and Yatziv. Rabbi Yochanan,
Yeshua.
I'm sorry, Rabbi Shua ben Korban says, why does Shema proceed Bahaya? So that one should first accept upon himself the yoke of the kingdom of heaven, and afterwards take upon himself to observe mitzvot. What does Bahaya come before Vayomer? Because Bahaya has applications both by day and by night, and Vayomer is only applicable by daytime. And if someone read the Shema but did not hear it, if it fulfills his obligation, Rabbi Yossi says he does not fulfill his obligation if one read the Shema without enunciating the letters properly. Rabbi Yossi says he has fulfilled his obligation. Rabbi Yossi says he has not fulfilled his obligation. If one reads in reverse order, he has not fulfilled his obligation. If one read and erred, he must revert to the place where he erred. Okay. I always want to get to that part that says if